Good morning, friends. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal and Adab. Today I'll be covering in my 181st video. This is going to cover the topic of my cantonment, Ambala. And friends, I would like that all of you must watch this video because these continuous videos on Ambala cantonment will actually open your eyes that when I could dig into so much of research material, why can't people sitting in various other 55, 56 cantonments do the same? So I'll go back to the Sith Satluj state in which 36 petty chief kings entered into a treaty with Sir David Auchterlonie in 1809. What is this treaty? I'll be speaking on the treaty in a different way. We must remember that the inhabitants from the rulers, or you can say, we are the rulers. So when is a treaty made, I'm trying to explain, is when you are on an equal. Two sovereigns sit and make a treaty. So that means in 1809, these 36 kings and their estates, they were complete sovereigns. Now, where is it written? If we read the Ambala Gazetteer of 1882, Sir David Auchterlonie Treaty 1809 and so-called Sith Satluj Treaty with the Treaty of Askeet, how they were in progress in Ambala district. After the fall of the Marathas, before the English in 1803, the whole tract was parcelled out among chiefs of various grades of power from the Pulkain Rajas of Patiala, Jeend, Naba, down to petty Sardars who had succeeded in securing by violence or fraud the possession of few villages. The disconnected chiefs at last in 1808 combined to apply to the British government for aid. The government, which was at time engaged in negotiations with Maharaja Ranjit Singh, accepted the responsibility to take over the Sith Satluj Protectorate Treaty in protection. By the year 1809, between the government and Ranjit Singh, there were forever secured from encroachments from the north. So the entire Maharaja Ranjit Singh of the Punjab was on the north side. Internal wars were forbidden. This proclamation even has a continued proclamation of 1811. But with exceptions, the powers and privileges of the chiefs remain untouched. Each great and small alike had within his own territory absolute civil, criminal and fiscal jurisdiction. That means even after this treaty, the sovereignty never transferred, subject to general agents and the right to skeets and so on and so on. So, the chiefs for the next 36 years from 1809, they remained in protection, that is somewhere till 1847. So even after 36 years, very few states lapsed to the booty or the county of the British because of the Treaty of Askeet, like they didn't have any legal heirs. So somehow this kept going on. So that means in 1843, let's presume, when Ambala cantonment was being made, 1847 till it remained, the incumbent ruler or the petty chief of Ambala was the complete sovereign. And who was she? She was Daya Kaur. The town actually was from Sangat Singh, it moved to Daya Kaur, who died in 1823. And now whether this terrain of Daya Kaur actually skeeted to the British, that has to be seen. No, it didn't. It clearly speaks in the gazetteer that only 3 rights skated to the Britishers. What were they? They were taxation, building safety and sanitation. Now let's read page 18, para 2 of the Gazetteer 1882, Ambala. June 1849, only sovereign powers were given to the British. It was accordingly declared that the exception of states already mentioned, all the chiefs should cease to hold sovereign powers, should lose all criminal, fiscal, civil jurisdictions and whatever, but with certain exceptional privileges. The revenue was still with the Rajas, but was to be assessed by a British officer. So Ambala finally was formed in 1843 and till 1849, presumably. The cantonment, which lies 4 miles to the southeast of the city. Now there is a distinction. We have a town called Ambala city, and if you go 4 miles to the southern part of it, you reach Ambala Can. And between it and the cantonment lies the civil station of later being about a quarter a mile from the city. So I presume that the present Ambala cantonment is defined like this. So 1809, when Daya Kaur's widow of Sardar Gurbaksh Singh, who died in 1783, the town had been originally conquered by Sangat Singh, what I had said, but was treacherously wrested back to Gurbaksh Singh, whom under that treaty of 1809, the guardianship, so Daya Kaur was temporarily ejected by Maharaja Ranjit Singh's in 1800, but was restored by this treaty. So this kept happening during this period because Maharaja Ranjit Singh was moving from Satluj to Jamna. So this Sit Satluj means this. So Ambala was up into it. On her death in 1823, the state lapsed to the British government for these sovereign rights, what I just said. So 1823 Gazetteer on page 13 very clearly shows the data of how much land in this district was owned by government. You'll be surprised, it is showing the land is nil. Why is it nil? When Ambala cantonment, let's say 1843, all lands belong to the government or to the military authority, then how come it was showing this? So the Jamabandi records, if you see of these 22 villages, the owner column was left blank. Where is this written? This was written in the Record of Rights in the making in 1910 in page 50 and para 3. So friends, we just need to work on to this, that how things are moving on. Now even the Record of Rights says that there was some 701.2 acres of land which was private lands. The probability is that the first instance, lands not immediately required for building or military purpose were handed over to the cantonment authority in order that the income derivable from them should form a nucleus of a cantonment. See, the Britishers, when they were doing settlements as per the Bengal Decimal Settlement of 1793, they were only looking for 1 acre, 1 biga and 1 rupee was the thumb rule of their land. So these lands which were cultivated by these petty Pattidars or Biswadars or Jagirdars, so this is how this Record of Right came up. The papers were prepared, field map was made, a khasra and a khatoni was created. The ownership column throughout was left blank in this report. Why? And none of the 13 chucks, including Tundla, Tundli, Gurala, Barnala, Mandali, Kanwali, Dudla, Nobra, Barafkhana, Karbalana, Ghordor, Babyal, So this entire area, out of which 63 acres was area was irrigated through wells, about 2,489 acres, making it a total area of 3,009 acres subsequently. Then another area was brought in, which was the grasslands. So this is how the new township was being created on the north latitude of 30 degrees 21 dimension and the east longitude of 76 degree 52 dash of the present town, which is, I said, on the southern part of Ambala city. This is very clear. So we need to, dig into these gazetteers, these records. So when were the settlements which in 1843 land was taken over from the southern part of the north of the city? Were they proprietors? Were they tenants? What was their status who were tilling this land on behalf of their Kaur or Sardar Gurbakh Singh? So the British settlement, it clearly removed or ousted the landlords from these lands. But you will be surprised, in Punjab, they couldn't do it. The officer who effected these settlements of the southern portion of the district was an advocate on recognition by the actual villagers. So the villagers took him and they were the proprietors of these lands. So they were assigned an allowance to their land as per the revenue which they were. So generally, he says in his report, their claim both for the rights to engage for revenue and for the right to collect the extra Biswadari allowance, such cases were mostly settled by arbitration. But no doubt the bias of settlement officer contributed in a certain degree to enhance the number of those who obtained the recognition of antiquated rights. The officer who conducted the settlements of the northern Tehsil, on the other hand, was of the opinion that in the majority of the cases, the superior rights of such original proprietors had fallen to completely in abeyance to admit of their recognition. And his policy was to maintain as proprietors all those who were found proprietors in possession, granting an extra Biswadari allowance only in very exceptional cases. So who were the proprietors? So the entire community in this area was called the Chadmari tenure, from chiefs to Jagirdars, to Charmaris to Talukdaris. Here also it is clearly saying that bungalow owners were the Charmaris or the Talukdaris. So now cantonment was taking its shape in Ambala and these proprietors were already existing. So will it be called the Laldora or the Abadi area? The other class, however, of the tenure is still extant. A Sikh invader finding himself not quite strong enough to reduce the cultivators of his newly acquired territory to complete subjection would come to a compromise with some of the most influential form among their numbers and grant them half the revenue of 1/4 of the gross produce. So the land revenue which the petty chiefs of the Sardar Gurbakh Singh or their cause earlier were taking was, let's say, one half was the land revenue, 1/4 was reimbursed to that grantee. So here, even after they conquered, the land revenue was being collected by them. They were in fact on a small scale Jagirdaris in alliance of the land revenue. When the time of settlement arrived, great difficulties were experienced in dealing with such cases, because originally the grant was not for an hereditary grant or a permanent grant or a transferable grant. So the government kept looking up to the divide and rule policy. The land owned by the Raja, but the tillers were the inhabitants and who were given the proprietary rights. So this is how the Talukdari came. And now what the Britishers said, okay, fine, you bring the revenue, and instead of getting bringing half of the revenue of the total produce, you get 1/4 of the revenue to us and keep the rest with you. So the settlement officer was settling these revenue assessments between them and the government like this. Now if we read page number 109 of Ambala Gazetteer 1925, he says the final report of second settlement again gave the status of 1809. So in 1925 also, it clearly says that the revenue was being collected by these Pattidari Jagirdaris. This point is rebrushed in Imperial Gazetteer of 1902 on page 34-35. What does it say? It reflects back to the 1773 Regulation Act of the Governor General, where they were clearly before this and by the Queen's order and the Pitt's Act, they were restricted to make war to accumulate more territory in the British terrain. So this entire part of Ambala Cantonment, which fell in Satluj state, the settlements actually took place in 1915-20. These will be found in Appendix 3 of the final report of second revised settlement of Ambala Cantonment. So revenue assignments to the Patti Jagirdars or simple Jagirdars was given the status what I just mentioned. If we read this entire Punjab land manual, it clearly read 4 types of Jagirdars or the Jagirs. The major Jagirs, the Pattidari Jagirdari, the Zaildars or subordinate feudatories of the major Jagirdar, or the war Jagirdars. So the Pattidari Jagirdars are the descendants of the Jagirdars who were given the status of 1809. So friends, we only need to work on this. We dig into our records of our cantonment the way I did it for my cantonment. This confidence of digging only brought me to where I am today. You know, in 2003, 5, 7, 8, when I was digging into these records, I will even be coming with videos where I'll show you 1843 original ghattas, the plans of Ambala Cantonment made out of 17 villages. So this is how the whole show was going on. What is to be done? So when this regulation of 1773, which actually restricted the British or the East India Company, Warring Hasty convinced the nation that it is essential for the state to assume supervision of Indian affairs. So Pitt's Act came 1784. This gave an establishment of boards of control, which was gradually reduced not just to the board members, and finally it came down to the Secretary of State India. So now Governor General order by the Pitt's Act actually was the Secretary of State India, and he was the sole member of this company. So Governor General in council was forbidden to make these kind of wars by these orders of the Queen. So we need to understand, when such orders were very clear, the authorities of the Court of Directors or the secret committee to make war except for protection of our own territories and those who are allies to make fresh treaties guaranteeing the integrity of any native state. In 1843, the pillars show 9,900 acres. Actually put to use was 18 acres. So the non-utilized 52 acres, what happened with that? So the boundary pillars are there. So we have so many things written in here where we can do this. Letter number 281, dated 31st/12/1909, from Commissioner Ambala to the Commissioner Superintendent, Delhi government. So the missile bandobast of the regular settlements tell us what happened. The zamindaris did not remove to another district. Half of them went to another village and half remained in the old Abadi, which though inside the cantonment, he is admitting in this letter, land being allowed to stand. The Sikhs were not made owners of the 149 bighas, but the land was considered the property of government, and the Sikhs were given 10 years lease or a form in the amount of rupees 280, 14 annas and 14 annas and 10 paisas. This is in the period of 1844 to 1854. In 1851, 1000 bighas of old Jandali village, including the Abadi sites, were given up by the cantonments. That means in 1851, some land went back. In 1854, the whole of 1149 bighas were handed over to the former zamindars, which engaged for a new land revenue at a progressive rate of 200 to 300 rupees as per the recorded owners in the records. Indeed, it was difficult to say who the proprietor of the lands were. As the term is nowadays understood, it must be remembered that this transaction took place before the annexation of Ambala territory and the formation of Ambala district. So that means this was done prior to 1843. Now there's this gazetteer, I'll just speak it in front. So the country was under the British protectorate. Patches of British territories were taken over on that Treaty of Skeet, on failures of Hayes, Sirdars, Pattidars. They all intermingled, great and small petty chiefs. There were how many? 36 Rajas, which I said in this Satluj state. So the entire sovereign powers remained with the petty chiefs of the Sikhs as per the Treaty of 1809. Proprietary rights in the soil were not adjusted until the regular settlements, which commenced in 1846 and concluded by another 10 years later. So again I am talking of that same area which says that this record of right which was made clearly says that Ambala cantonment, what was the land, what was the tenure, how was this treaty created. So we can all dig into our records. If every cantonment has their 1882 or 1867 gazetteer, they have nothing to lose on. They have nothing to lose on. And friends, I can bet on, these cantonments have an amazing settlements. So once again, I'm saying please dig into your records the way I have done it for Ambala. Thank you. Good day.